President Xi Jinping says his state visit to China allowed Seoul and Beijing find a mutual understanding and constructive ways to mend the issues between the two countries. South Korea kicked off CES in Las Vegas with robots that are a tangible presence in the human physical space. U.S. President Donald Trump's pursuit of Venezuela's oil is becoming even clearer, with Trump saying Venezuela will turn over up to 50 million barrels of oil to his country. President Xi Jinping is on his way back to the country after wrapping up a four-day state visit to China. He held a press briefing this afternoon with the presidential press corps on the last day. Our Blue House correspondent Song Yujin starts us off.
A trip with even more progress than anticipated. That's how President Lee Jae-myung described his four-day state visit to China during a surprise press conference on Wednesday.
교감도 많이 이루어졌던 것 같고 또 예를 들면 대립할 수 있는 사안들에 대해서도 아주 원만하게 해소할 수 있는 길을 찾아냈던 것 같습니다.
High on the agenda was North Korea. President Lee said peace and stability on the Korean peninsula were among the key issues discussed in depth with President Xi Jinping.
그래서 우리는 노력하지만 지금 현재는 완전히 차단된 상태라서 소통 자체가 안 되니까 중국이 중재자 역할을 평화의 중재자 역할을 좀 해주면 좋겠다 이렇게 얘기했습니다.
President Xi responded that Beijing would make efforts in that direction, but stressed the need for patience, given how hostile inter-Korean relations have become in recent years. For a nuclear-free Korean peninsula, Lee mentioned he asked China to help convey his message that a more realistic approach would be to first stop Pyongyang's nuclear program development in exchange for corresponding measures. When asked whether he sees signs of improvement in China's unofficial restrictions on Korean cultural content, including K-dramas and K-pop, the president answered that there was a clear expression of intent.
석자 얼음이 한꺼번에 언 것도 아닌데 또 한꺼번에 다 녹겠냐. 또 과일은 때가 되면 익어서 떨어진다. 이렇게 직접 시 주석께서 말씀하셨는데 그게 정확한 표현인 것 같습니다.
He added that he emphasized the importance of easing such restrictions to address growing anti-China sentiment in South Korea. Regarding China's installation of large structures, including aquaculture facilities, in Seoul and Beijing's jointly managed maritime area in the West Sea, working-level talks will begin to clarify where the boundary is in the shared zone. President Lee says he and President Xi have agreed to meet in person at least once a year. With China set to host the 2026 APEC leaders meeting in Shenzhen, attention is now turning to whether the two leaders will hold another bilateral meeting this year. 송유진, Arirang News, Shanghai.
Staying in Shanghai, President Yi visited the Provisional Government building on Wednesday to mark its centennial anniversary. He noted that Korea's history of fighting for independence serves as the foundation of its friendly cooperation with China. He also vowed to put in efforts to repatriate the remains of independence patriots yet to return home. The Korean leader also thanked China for protecting the Provisional Government building, which was restored in 1993. The building in Shanghai is one of several headquarters used by the Korean government in exile during Japanese colonial rule. China has placed restrictions on the export of certain rare earth elements to Japan amid bilateral tensions over the latter's earlier remarks regarding Taiwan. Chae Myung has the details.
China has significantly heightened tension with Japan by imposing an immediate ban on exports of items that could have military uses, underscoring Beijing's readiness to apply economic leverage amid political friction linked to Taiwan. On Tuesday, China's Ministry of Commerce announced restrictions on shipments to Japan of so-called dual-use goods, which are products with both civilian and military applications. The move represents a notable escalation in Beijing's response to remarks by Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi regarding Taiwan, an issue China considers central to its sovereignty. Chinese officials have not clarified which specific products are subject to the restrictions, prompting analysts to caution that the measure could interfere with critical supply chains supporting Japan's manufacturing industry. Dual-use categories typically include certain rare earth elements, advanced machine tools, electronic components, sensors, lasers, and other items widely used in industrial production. The absence of precise guidance makes it hard to assess the short-term economic fallout, though the wide scope of the category increases the likelihood of significant supply disruptions. The Chinese military stated that Beijing's decision to impose export controls on dual-use items was a response to Japan's moves to strengthen its military capabilities. It added, as a responsible major country, China has a right and obligation to prevent its goods from being used in ways that undermine regional security. This measure is not only aimed at safeguarding national security and interests, but will also help curb rising militarization in the Asia-Pacific, inject certainty into peace and stability in the region, and demonstrate China's firm commitment to maintaining the regional security order. Meanwhile, Japan's Chief Cabinet Secretary Kihara Minoru said the export curbs were regrettable, adding that Tokyo will examine the details and consider an appropriate response. Jae Arirang News.
Washington's top diplomat in Seoul will not return to his post after roughly 70 days in office. According to U.S. sources, Kevin Kim, the U.S. acting ambassador, informed the Korean government he will not resume his duties after traveling to the U.S. for Christmas. He's reportedly returning to a senior post either at the White House or the State Department. Kim assumed the role in October last year, just ahead of President Donald Trump's attendance at the APEC leaders meeting in Gyeongju. His departure will further prolong the vacancy left since former Ambassador Philip Goldberg stepped down a year ago. Deputy Chief of Mission James Heller is expected to resume the charge d'affaires role, as the Trump administration has yet to nominate a formal ambassador to Seoul. After capturing Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, the U.S. is now eyeing his country's oil sector, with signs of export resumption showing. And Trump himself planning to meet with the heads of American oil companies. Our Kim Bo-kyung tells us more.
Amid moves by the U.S. to control Venezuela's oil sector, some media outlets reported that signs of the country resuming oil exports are emerging. According to reports on Wednesday, Chevron, the only U.S. oil company operating in Venezuela, has sent 11 oil tankers to the country to begin loading crude oil. Bloomberg reported that one of the tankers had already completed loading, while 2 others had arrived at a port. Such signs come as U.S. President Donald Trump announced that Venezuela's interim government would deliver between 30 million and 50 million barrels of high-quality sanctioned crude oil to the U.S. That is valued to reach up to $3 billion, around 4.3 trillion Korean won. In a post on the Truth Social platform, Trump said the oil would be sold at market prices and that he, as the U.S. president, will control the money, making sure it is used to benefit the people of Venezuela and the U.S. He added that he instructed Energy Secretary Chris Wright to carry out the plan immediately, noting that the oil would be transported via tankers and delivered directly to unloading ports in the U.S. Trump added that his administration was preparing to meet with senior executives from major U.S. oil companies.
I'm also meeting with oil companies. Let's go. You know what that's about. We've got a lot of oil to drill, which is going to bring down oil prices even further.
The meeting, expected to be held on Friday, is to discuss making significant investments in Venezuela's oil sector, according to the sources. Companies that would be attending the meeting have yet to be confirmed. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
The United States' surprise military operation in Venezuela last week continues to fuel reactions and varying responses around the world, from America's allies to adversaries. We focused on the reactions and implications on the Korean Peninsula. For this, we have our correspondent Oh Seung in the studio with us. Welcome back, Soo-young.
Good evening, Tommy.
So, Soo-young, let's start with North Korea, which reacted to the news by criticizing the Trump administration. What can be made out of the response?
So if we take a look at North Korea's response, the level of its response, it's actually quite restrained than thought. Actually, the regime was very quick to denounce what it called the US's brutal and rogue actions, and even calling it out, saying it broke the international law. Rather ironic coming from North Korea.
Right.
But when you look at what it said, it didn't really elaborate on what had actually occurred, merely calling it the Venezuelan situation without terms like strikes or attack or even seizure like Russia and China said in their statements. Also, it was not a comment by a high-level figure like Kim Jong-un nor his outspoken sister Kim Yo-jong, nor was there a standalone foreign ministry statement, but it actually came in the form of a foreign ministry spokesperson responding to a journalist's question. And one expert I talked to says that there's a reason for this.
North Korea seems to have adjusted the level of its response to the U.S. As a regime fundamentally opposed to the U.S., it couldn't remain silent, but it doesn't have major interests like China in criticizing the U.S.
Then how is the regime looking at Venezuela? I mean, does this pose any concern for the leader, Kim Jong-un?
Well, here, of course, we can only speculate as to how much Kim Jong-un might personally feel threatened by these developments, but we can safely assume that Pyongyang does quite closely observe other authoritarian leaders around the world, how they might interact or even bargain with the United States and ultimately their fate as well. So this case has been talked about again and again, but in the past, Kim Jong-un has reportedly noted the case of Libya, the brutal death of the North African country's former dictator Muammar Gaddafi. Now, Gaddafi had given up his nuclear weapons program in response to Western demands, and he was later brought down and killed by a domestic uprising. So this reportedly served as a cautionary tale and even justification for the North Korean leader in pursuit of his nuclear weapons. So in this case of Venezuela, where America captured a sitting leader based on, of course, very highly precise intelligence, I assume this would certainly trigger caution over Kim Jong-un's security detail, possible leaks that might come from his close circle, and exposure to US intel. So Maduro's arrest could, I think, also change some strategic calculations on re-engaging with the United States as well. If you remember Maduro's interview, that took place 48 hours before his departure. He told a Spanish journalist that he and Trump had last spoken very respectfully in November. He also said he's willing to discuss oil trade and even open up to the US for investments, actually floating the idea of an agreement to combat drug trafficking. Then 2 days later, he found himself captured and standing trial in Trump's home city of New York. So all of this for Kim Jong-un, this might cause him to think twice about his interactions and, of course, potential negotiations with Donald Trump. So I'd say this might likely embolden his resolve to actually hold on to his nuclear weapons as his ultimate security guarantee so that he will not end up like Maduro nor like Gaddafi.
North Korea believes it is different from Venezuela. Venezuela has no nuclear weapons and no ICBMs, so it cannot retaliate. However, North Korea believes it has a clear deterrent, and thus the U.S. would not dare touch North Korea. So there also seems to be a certain level of confidence, and that's why Kim is resuming his day-to-day activities. From his daily photos, his security protection doesn't seem to have increased just yet.
You know, speaking of his day-to-day activities, he's been quite active in the new year now, this time with his young daughter, Jae, right?
That's right, Tam. Very interesting. Of course, we all saw that photo of them on New Year's Eve, the New Year's celebrations, of her leaning over to kiss him on the cheek.
Right.
Her mother smiling next to them, almost looking like a normal nuclear family.
Exactly. That's why there's been more, speculation about her potential succession, right?
That's right. So on New Year's Day, Kim Jong-un took his daughter Kim Jae to the Kumsusan Palace of the Sun, where he placed her in the exact central position where he himself actually should have stood to pay respect to his father and grandfather.
This declares to his late grandfather Kim Il-sung and his father Kim Jong-il that his daughter will succeed him as the fourth leader of North Korea. It also symbolically signals this to the public. At the upcoming 9th Workers' Party Congress, there's quite a high chance that she will be given an official position corresponding to that of a successor.
Then what else can we expect from the North's upcoming party congress, Soo-young?
Well, we are expecting the regime to put out its foreign policy or external policy, as they say, for the next 5 years. And this, of course, will be the highest decision-making body, the Workers' Party's 9th Congress. So there we can also expect Kim as chairman to declare the continuation of his policy, simultaneously developing nuclear and conventional forces. And he'll be justifying that by strongly criticizing South Korea and the US. And there we might actually hear him cite America's intervention in Venezuela to justify the need to further strengthen North Korea's nuclear forces.
Now, Soo-young, now that we've entered a new year, I do have to ask again, is there still a chance of the meeting between the two leaders of the North Korea and the US?
Well, Tammy, as you know, chances are very slim, but it's not impossible. It really depends on how generous Chinese leader Xi Jinping might be feeling, as President Trump will be visiting Beijing in April, and Xi Jinping might be inspired to play the role of mediator and invite Kim Jong-un to Beijing, where he could potentially meet with Trump.
North Korea is currently building hospitals across different regions, but it lacks essential medical equipment to put inside those hospitals. If China were to support North Korea with such urgently needed supplies and invite Kim to Beijing, that could naturally create an opportunity for Trump and Kim to meet.
Of course, President Jae Myung this week has also agreed on the need to revive dialogue with Pyongyang during his talks with Chinese leader Xi Jinping. So all of this, again, really overwhelmingly depends on how motivated China is to promote better relations between Pyongyang and Washington and the two Koreas as well.
Indeed, as ever, let's wait and see. Soo-young, thanks for coming in tonight.
Thanks for having me, Tammy.
Artificial intelligence takes a physical form at this year's Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, and it's generating a lot of buzz at the event and beyond. Our correspondent Kim Do-yeon tells us more.
Meet Atlas. Hyundai Motor Group's Boston Dynamics unveiled this humanoid robot to kick off CES 2026. It drew attention as it resembles the body of a human being, but its limbs move much more freely. The car maker is focusing on robots, specifically physical AI, as the next chapter of its business.
Robots equipped with physical AI. Robots that perceive the world like we do and work responsibly for us and with us. This is technology that is built for humanity. Technology that supports us, extends our capabilities, makes our work safer and in some cases more meaningful.
And Hyundai also won the Best of Innovation award with its Moped. The autonomous one can deliver items up to 47 kilograms. Another key Korean company in physical AI is Doosan Robotics. Together with Maple Advanced Robotics Inc., its Scan and Go robot won awards in both AI and robotics, the definition of physical AI. It moves autonomously and scans surfaces to identify areas that need work. Here is how the company explained the technology.
So what we're accomplishing with our physical AI is we're giving the ability for the robots to see, think, and act. So the robot is able to see with our 3D vision. So just like a person would, it's able to take a decision based on the meaningful robot movement with our physical AI that's embedded into the system, and finally do the work.
And this robot by the company is for sorting out parcels and organizing storage. I'm going to put in Arirang. Now this robot finds the block with the correct letters and completes the word. And here at CES, because physical AI requires complex hardware, component makers are also gaining attention, including companies that make the sensors or develop AI software to process data. I spoke to one company that provides the LiDAR sensors for robots and vehicles. After attending CES for a decade in smaller booths, the company finally secured a booth on the main show floor this year, citing the rise of physical AI as perfect timing.
Beyond existing cameras actually capturing 3D spatial data, I believe LiDAR is the new core of the physical AI era. In that sense, as a core sensor for physical AI, it is truly an honor and great to be able to exhibit right here in the center of the show.
As for South Korean companies, while physical AI is not yet a standalone award category, 6 South Korean companies were explicitly identified as winners in the robotics category, or for robotic solutions centered on this new technology. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News, Las Vegas.
Freezing air from the northwest is set to flow into the country, causing a sharp drop in temperatures overnight. Because of this cold air, cold wave advisories will begin to be put in place from 9 p.m. tonight around the center areas and Gyeongsang-Mukdo province. In Seoul, today's high only topped out at 1 degree. Temperatures will keep falling and it will drop sharply to -9 degrees Celsius tomorrow morning, with the wind making it feel closer to -14 degrees Celsius. Not only in Seoul, but it will also be a cold morning around the country, with Chuncheon at -13 degrees, Daegu and Gyeongju at -6 degrees. Highs will rise to only -1 degree in Seoul and Chuncheon, 5 degrees in Jeju. Rain or snow will begin in the center areas on Friday night, and it will spread to most parts of the country on Saturday. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is all we have for tonight. I'm Kim Da-mi. From all of us here at Arirang, thanks for watching and good night.
The magical door to the world of K-animation is swinging wide open. Meet your instant new BFF, the adorable Catch. Tina Ping will have you hooked from the very first glance. Need a hand? Our Robocar Pony Rescue team is always zooming in to save the day. How about tagging along on Pinkfong and Pal's super exciting quest to reclaim their lost magic? With the mysterious life forms Cabion by your side, you can become a Cabion master and save humanity like the total hero. Protecting children's innocence while igniting their boundless imaginations. That's the magic of Korean animation. K-animation, the ultimate bestie for kids worldwide.
Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring the most pressing issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mo-gyun. South Korea and China are entering a new phase in their economic relationship. The recent summit between their leaders came at a pivotal moment when global supply chains are shifting, strategic industries are under pressure, and the broader geopolitical landscape is growing more unpredictable. Both governments are signaling a renewed push for cooperation, but the challenges seem to be layered. Competition in tech, pressure from the U.S., and concerns about long-term growth. With 2026 already here and Korea's recovery still uneven, today we take a closer look at what this new phase in Korea-China ties could mean for business, strategy, and stability. And for this, we connect to Jeff Moon, president of China Moon Strategies LLC and former assistant U.S. Trade Representative for China. A big welcome.
Thank you. Pleased to be here.
And also joining us is Ho Jun-young, Associate Professor of Economics at Seogang University. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
So let's start a discussion with Mr. Moon. Of course, the latest South Korea-China summit, it brought renewed economic cooperation into focus. But could you tell us why this momentum is so significant right now, and how has the direction of bilateral ties shifted compared to previous years?
President Lee came to office promising a more pragmatic and less ideological approach toward China, and he said that his summit goal was to reset the relationship. His success in broadening economic cooperation with South Korea's largest trading partner is important. Many government and corporate MOUs were signed at the summit, but the details are really unclear, so they are difficult to assess. What we know is that Korea and China have agreed to engage each other more frequently on trade and perhaps other issues. But as far as we can tell, there's been no concrete change in China's policy regarding North Korea, maritime disputes, and the Chinese ban on Korean cultural products since 2016. Meanwhile, while the summit was underway, China threatened and then sanctioned neighboring Japan, reminding us of similar Chinese aggressive behavior toward Korea during the THAAD missile dispute. My overall assessment is that the summit boosted Korea-Chinese bilateral relations, but that there really wasn't a broad reset, and the tangible outcomes are really mostly limited to the commercial arena because the major political differences really can't be resolved anytime soon.
Of course. So we've seen some progress, but not so much of a difference from past relations. But building on that, a large business delegation accompanied President Lee in the summit, signaling strong private sector interest. So Professor Ho, what kinds of opportunities do you see opening up for Korean industries as a result of this?
A lot. So there was a discussion about the possibility that Korea-China cooperation in strategic industries such as semiconductors, batteries, electronic vehicles, and AI could shift from now it's more like a vertical specialization, but to more horizontal collaboration. The interest of individual companies in Korea are even more specific. Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix operate semiconductor production bases in China, and amid the recent trend of import U.S. restriction on bringing equipment into China. So production stability and supply chain management have emerged as key issues. Hyundai Motor Group and LG Energy Solution also maintain production hubs in China. So it is likely that the two sides discussed joint responses to changes in the way they cooperate in the electronic vehicle and battery industries.
Right. So, of the many agreements and understandings between the two sides, Professor Ho, which stood out the most for you, and what do you think Seoul should be prioritizing as it moves even forward?
I think all of these agendas are important, but among them, I believe the most crucial one is to secure supply chains for critical minerals. China supplies more than 90% of the world refined rare earth element, which are essential raw material for advanced industries such as semiconductors. In this context, it is significant that during the Korea-China summit, China confirmed that it is actively cooperating to ensure that Korean companies can smoothly procure critical minerals, and stated that it will continue this effort going forward. Although no concrete bilateral documents have been released, it will be important for Korea to secure specific agreement from China regarding the supply chain for critical minerals in the future.
So we'll be looking forward for developments on that front. But now let's widen the lens a little bit and invite Washington to the picture. Mr. Moon, so how is the U.S. likely to view the South Korea's latest outreach to China, and how can Korean companies strike a strategic balance between U.S. expectations and Chinese market potential?
The United States wants Korea to grow its economy and prosper, but is concerned that China may exploit Korean cooperation to circumvent American trade measures and to perhaps undermine the U.S.-Korea security alliance. For example, there were references at the summit to potential cooperation on a variety of technical issues that the professor mentioned and various sensitive technologies. China has long sought to obtain access to advanced Korean technologies by both legal and illegal means. So the U.S. will be watching for hints of technology leakage or circumvention of U.S. export controls. The U.S. hopes that South Korea and other strategic partners will prioritize supply chain security over short-term commercial benefits from Beijing. Washington views excessive economic dependence on China as a potential vulnerability that could be exploited to create cracks in the U.S.-Korea alliance.
Right, then how should South Korea balance this difference of interests? Mr. Moon.
Well, I think that South Korea needs to look at both the importance of maintaining its trade relationship with its largest trading partner, but also its security interests, which are probably even more important. Those are existential. So I think that there needs to be a pragmatism going forward, evaluating opportunities versus risks and making those calculations going forward.
Right. Here's where the administration's pragmatic diplomacy would come in. Now, alongside these economic themes, there's growing talk of restarting cultural and people-to-people exchanges as well. Professor Hall, from your perspective, how economically meaningful would that kind of soft power reset be for the two countries?
Yeah, although there was no official announcement lifting the Korean wave ban, Hananyang in Korean, during this summit, the two countries agreed to gradually expand cultural content exchanges, as you mentioned. So if the ban were to be fully removed, Korea would be able to freely enter China's cultural content market, which is valued at approximately more than 2,600 trillion won. So it could also help revitalize the tourism sector in Korea. The number of Chinese tourists visiting Korea, which once reached 8 million per year, was cut in half immediately after the ban was imposed. It was about 8 years ago. In this sense, lifting the ban could generate economic benefit, not only through cultural content, but also by boosting tourism from Chinese visitors to Korea, I think.
Right, so let's hope it would really gradually open again. Now, meanwhile, let's step up further to the geopolitical landscape. Lately, America's invasion of Venezuela has raised fresh risks. Given China's involvement in Venezuela's energy sector, Mr. Moon, how could this shift the dynamics in the broader rivalry with Washington?
Well, the Venezuela situation is highly volatile and thus difficult to predict. With regard to oil, for example, Venezuela really is only a minor player in world markets because it produces only about 1% of the global oil supply and only 4% of China's oil demand. But President Trump's announcement yesterday that Venezuela could deliver up to 50 million barrels to the U.S. for sale on the global market has introduced new uncertainty and driven global prices lower. This unprecedented proposal with no additional details means that almost anything is possible in Venezuela's post-Maduro oil sector. There's also the question of what international precedent the Venezuela situation sets and what broader implications there might be. Many observers have speculated that Trump's Venezuela adventure is an invitation for rogue nations around the world to take bold moves that ignore or violate longstanding international norms. But it's really too soon to tell. And that's a topic that could take us many hours to analyze. So I'll note that concern without exploring it further for the time being.
Right. That incident was really a big incident that could reshape a lot of things geopolitically. But South Korean government itself, it has said that the immediate impact on the markets of this Maduro incident will likely be limited. But Professor Ho, for the long term, over the long term, what kind of variables could we be watching as the situation unfolds?
Yeah, I agree with the South Korean government in the sense that the impact of the Venezuela situation on the financial market appears to have been limited because the U.S. military operation was carried swiftly and very effectively. So, but Venezuela's economy accounts for only about 0.11% of global GDP, which is quite small, and its stock and bond market are not strongly connected to the international financial market. However, given that Venezuela holds the world's largest oil reserve, the geopolitical risk surrounding the country could become a source of instability in the oil market. In this regard, whether the United States conduct additional large-scale military operations and whether the situation turns into a prolonged conflict are important potential variables. In the case of a full-scale war, there could also be a case that a global flight to safe asset, increasing demand for the US dollar, which in turn could put additional pressure on the $1 exchange rate, which has already been elevated quietly recently.
Right. So we'll really have to see how this incident will unfold and impact the markets moving forward. But turning to domestic markets, South Korea's Kospi recently broke the 4,600 mark, hitting a new record. Professor, what is driving this momentum?
I think the biggest driver of this upward trend is the expectation that semiconductor companies tied to the U.S. AI rally, for example, like Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix, will show very strong performance this year and next year. These two companies alone account for about 1/3 of the Kospi's total market capitalization, and their rising stock prices appear to be leading the overall increase in the index. If the Kospi rises by just about 10% more, it will reach the 5,000 level. And as expectation for corporation earning growth, security firms have recently released report suggesting that the Kospi could reach 5,000 as early as the first quarter of this year.
Wow, so we could be looking forward to a 5,000 as early as the first quarter of this year?
Yeah, that's one of the government agenda.
All right, we will be looking forward for that. Now, finally, Mr. Moon, looking ahead to the year 2026, South Korea actually faces both recovery hopes and lingering uncertainty as well. So how much will economic ties with China and supply chain shifts shape the growth outlook?
I think that economic cooperation with both China and the United States will play a key role in Korea's future growth. I found it interesting that the four-day summit this past week included 2 days in Beijing, which is China's political capital, and 2 days in Shanghai, which is China's economic capital. The amount of time dedicated to deepening business ties in Shanghai confirms the high level of interest on both sides. As for supply chains, China has in recent years tried to avoid U.S. tariffs by transshipping products through third countries to disguise their origin before arrival in the U.S. The Trump administration has created a special trade task force to tackle this problem in 2025, and I think we're going to see increased enforcement action in 2026. Trump administration officials are asking the governments of Korea and other trading partners to assist with this crackdown, a trend that I think is going to become increasingly prominent in 2026. China has already threatened to punish countries that cooperate with American anti-transshipment efforts, so Seoul will have to navigate this situation carefully, I think, in the future.
Then what kind of a response, Mr. Moon, do you think would be helpful for the South Korean government and the industry as well?
Well, there are long-standing laws that prohibit countries from shipping goods to intermediate countries, simply slapping a sticker on it saying that it is a product of that country and then shipping it on to the United States. So I think a lot of the enforcement is going to focus on that kind of transshipment problem. The problem gets even more complicated as you think about perhaps measuring the amount of components, say, from China before they go into the U.S., or the level of transformation that those goods undergo before they go to the U.S. That gets to changing American laws, which is a bit more difficult and a bit more complicated. But this is a very complicated issue, a deep well that has lots of legal aspects that need to be sorted out in the year to come.
Right. We'll have to keep close tabs on how that moves forward. Thank you so much for your insights, Mr. Moon.
Thank you.
And Professor Hall, we really appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you.
And that'll be all from us on Within the Frame. Be sure to tune in again next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Till then, stay informed and engaged.